Mr. Chair, we are live.
Let's go ahead and wait for the rest of the people to come in. How many are we waiting for?
Mr. Chair, I think the mayor is the last one in.
Okay, we'll wait for Mayor Boland. Oh, Mr. Vunich, should I go ahead and get started?
Mr. Chair, I would say go ahead. We have 9 members, so we easily have a quorum. Thank you.
All right. Want to welcome everyone to tonight's City of Wildwoods Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for August 2nd. Due to St. Louis County COVID protocol, we are doing this meeting via Zoom webinar platform. So we'll start off with, I want to welcome all the attendees online, and we'll do a roll call of commission members. Mr. Newberry.
Commissioner Hofree. Ms. Hofree, can we hear you?
Yeah, sorry. I hit the wrong unmute button. I'm here, by the way.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Cohn. Excuse me, Mr. Cohn is in the attendees window. While Mr. Cohn comes into the meeting, Commissioner Broyles is here. Commissioner Beatty.
Here.
Commissioner Depler.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Commissioner Cohn.
Here.
Thank you. Chair Lee.
Present.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Mayor Boland.
Here.
Thank you.
Moving on, tonight's agenda, we have 1 public hearing, 2 letters of recommendation, 1 information report, and 2 site development plan recommendations, and then 1 other item. So I'll open up with the approval of the minutes from July 19 and have a motion to approve the minutes. Commissioner Broyles, and second by Councilman Brost. All those in favor say aye.
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 Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. The minutes are approved. Does the Department of Planning have any opening remarks? Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Chair, I do not, but thank you for approving the minutes. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item is the public comment session. Mr. Newberry, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we do have several in attendance tonight's Zoom meeting. Many of them are petitioners for items on the agenda. If any of those would like to speak during the general public comment session, if they would use the raise hand feature. And just a reminder, this is not for the public hearing. This is for a general public comment session. And once more, if the attendees who may want to speak would use the raise hand feature, put something in the chat to let us know you'd like to speak to the commission. Mr. Chair, it doesn't look like anyone is raising their hands or putting anything in the chat.
Okay. We'll move on then to the tonight's public hearing. And I'll read the city script for the record. In the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning the advertised items. Since this request is being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on tonight's, and consideration of this item is to be taken no earlier than September 7th, 2021. This approach ensures members of the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their positions. Those in attendance via Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate if they wish to speak at this hearing, or indicate in the chat feature that you would like to speak. Team member will add you to the list of speakers that will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. In addition, information to this item can be found at the city's website, www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation in tonight's hearing. So, Mr. Vunich, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, before reading the request into the record, the department would like to enter into the record the following items: the charter of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, the master plan of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, Chapter 415 of the City of Wildwood's Municipal Code, which is its zoning ordinance, the file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning relative to this particular petition, and all contents contained therein. And then finally, all items that are offered as part of the evidence, testimony, or exhibits relative to tonight's public hearing. Mr. Chair, the petition tonight under consideration is PZ 22-21, Fairnick, Polger, 17770, Hornbeam Drive, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005, care of SunPro Solar, 22171, MCH Road, Mandeville, Louisiana, 70471. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the R1 1-acre resident district with a planned environment unit, PEU, street address 17770, Hornbeam Drive, locator number 19B, 510315, for the installation of roof-mounted solar panels, which are to be so situated on the dwelling as to be visible from the adjoining roadway. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.110 R1 1-acre resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning code, which establishes standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. The requested permit is required due to the panels' placement on the side-facing area of the roofs of the dwelling and would be visible from the adjoining roadway. This particular property is located in Ward 2. Mr. Newberry, Mr. Chair, has a brief slide presentation that he can provide to the members of the commission and others in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry, I'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Give me a moment to share my screen. Department would like to provide just a brief slideshow presentation. The first slide you see is an aerial photograph of the area of the city of Wildwood. The subject site is in this very light blue color that I'm highlighting with the cursor. This roadway here, this long roadway, is Wild Horse Parkway Drive, and to the north is its intersection with Wild Horse Creek Road. The next image is a plan view of the overall lot with the configuration of the home on the lot, the driveway, and then Hornbeam Drive, the public street here. The next slideshow is a zoomed in section of the home itself. Just like to bring your attention to the panels that are proposed at this location, and this location, as they are the panels that will be visible from the street, which is what's required, the conditional use permit request. The next few slides will be photographs of the subject home. This is looking directly at the home from the street. This is one of the roof areas that were highlighted in the previous slide. This is taken from the west side of the home. Again, this is another one of the roof areas that were highlighted previously. And the next photograph is from the east side of the lot, showing the third roof area that was highlighted in the previous slide. And then the next few photographs are just to give some perspective of the lot fronting onto the street. This is an image looking towards the west. And this is an image standing in the petitioner driveway, looking to the east. Beyond this image is where the cul-de-sac terminates. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the department's slideshow presentation. I would note that there's an individual named Isabella who is here from SunPro Solar, representing the homeowner for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. I'll open this up for discussion. We can hear from the petitioner, or I can open it up to the commission. Commissioner Cohn.
Yeah, if you could, Mr. Vunich, kind of refresh my memory as what was the rationale for requiring a conditional use permit for solar panels if they were visible from the street? Why was that brought into, why do we do that?
Mr. Cohn and members of the commission, prior to the establishment of the regulations that are now in place, and as you know, we updated them recently, there was not a requirement for a conditional use permit for panels that may be visible from a public or private street, as well as any that would be ground mounted. What the department was discovering is that as people were installing these panels that were visible from basically the front of the house, i.e. the street, we were getting questions and complaints about them. The thought was, and this was processed through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, is that if we did have a process such as the conditional use permit that would allow for public input and then an opportunity to basically look at the proposal and see if there is a better approach that would be appropriate to address concerns of neighbors and others. And so for the most part, I don't think the regulations were intended to preclude them from being installed. It was just a better way to notify neighbors to ensure that everything was done to minimize impacts. And if impacts couldn't be minimized, a procedure to address it. Thank you.
Is that still the case today, that solar panels have a negative impact on their neighbors? It's my understanding that talking to various residential real estate brokers, they don't see that as a negative impact, but more of a way of showing progress in a neighborhood. Go ahead, Mr. Pohl.
Well, Mr. Cohen, I still would say that when we do have certain applications come in, people do express either reservations or they at least say, thank you for doing this because now I know what is being proposed. Oftentimes in situations like this subdivision, the homeowner may be engaged in conversation with the trustees, but the neighbors may not know exactly what is being proposed. Again, in many regards, a public hearing is just that, the opportunity for the public to hear about what is being proposed. Certainly, if you look at the tables that have been provided in different reports on solar energy systems, City of Wildwood has authorized many of them. And I would say that our intent, again, is not to preclude them. It's just to make sure that they're done appropriately and safely. Thank you.
Mayor Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I ask the question to the petitioner's representative, in response to Commissioner Cohn's question, which was a great one, I asked Joe to provide the commission probably 18 months ago or so with a synopsis of the statistical data one way or the other as to whether solar panels enhance the value of a home. And my recollection is that it was an extensive production of studies that demonstrated there is no enhancement to the value of the home. Joe, is that your recollection of the result of that data?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer to Mr. Newberry. He did the initial research with the American Planning Association, and I'm going to let him answer that question. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I do recall from the conclusions that were made as part of that research that the studies that were provided were inconclusive in regards to the value of the home itself.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well. Thank you, Travis. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Ms. Perea, the representative from the solar panel company.
Mayor Boland, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have a couple of questions. So, Ms. Perea, thank you for joining us tonight. Is this the first solar panel petition on behalf of your company before the city, or have there been others previously? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I do believe that this is the first on behalf of our company. That's correct.
Okay. And just for our information, relative to the residents of our city that has contracted with you, before you contract with them and have them sign the contract, are you advising them of the fact that they may not be able to get some of these panels approved?
Yes.
Okay. And you're
Yes.
showing them copies of the rules and they're aware of that going into it?
Yes, because we also deal, aside with cities, we also deal with HOAs who have very strict rules. So we have people on our team who deal with that. We say if we go forward today, we'll deal with that. And if we can't go forward, then, it's no cost to you.
Okay. And so that means, therefore, that just hypothetically, if the commission were to not approve this because of the visibility of these to the street, they wouldn't be surprised by that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. Then my last question relates to the configuration. Is there any way, actually I have two questions. First of the last two, is there any way, given the shape of the home and the location of it vis-a-vis the sun, that those panels that are facing the street and visible, or not facing, but fairly visible,
right,
from the street, and I'm assuming the answer to this is no, but I just want to make sure, can be relocated on the home in an area that would not be visible to produce roughly the same degree of energy savings? Is that possible or not?
It's not possible. So we have designers and engineers who pre-design. They look at the home before we even show up to the home, and they're able to see where the vents are on the home and how many panels we can fit on each roof. And that is, those 19 panels on all of those roofs are the max amount of panels that we can put on. If we were to only limit it to the 7 panels on the back of the home, it would only produce about 20% of his energy usage a year.
Okay, thank you. And this is a question to you or Joe. Do we have, I know we require subdivision approval. Actually, it's a two-part question. Is this the Wild Horse subdivision or, well, that's probably in your report. What is the subdivision's position, the trustees, relative to whether this is permissible? Do we have that yet, Joe?
Mr. Newberry talked with the homeowners association representative today, and I'll let him explain.
Thank you. I did have a conversation with the representative from the management company that represents the homeowners association. She indicated that the homeowners association indentures were determined to not allow the solar panels visible from the street. The department did request any correspondence that stated that to the homeowners, but didn't receive it in time for tonight's meeting.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Depler.
So I just had a quick follow-up question to Mayor Boland's initial question about the effect on property values of surrounding homes. I know Travis answered about the potential effect of the value of the existing home where you're putting the panels on, but what about the surrounding homes? Because I know that was kind of our initial concern 18 months ago. And I thought I remembered that it did not have any detrimental effect on the value of the surrounding homes.
Mr. Newberry?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Depler, thank you for the question. You identified half of the answer that I didn't give to the commission when I answered Mayor Boland's first question. It was inconclusive regarding the value of the home itself they were to be installed on, as well as inconclusive on any negative impact on the neighboring properties as well.
Thank you. I feel better that I didn't totally forget the answer previously. So thanks.
Commissioner Beatty.
Sorry, had to unmute. Yeah, I was just going to agree with what Commissioner Depler said. My recollection was that there might have been a small benefit to the home itself, but it was inconclusive with immediate neighbors as far as an improvement or detriment.
Mayor Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what I'm getting ready to say, I say with all due respect and favor toward energy savings and protecting our environment. Whether it is solar panels or anything else that comes before this commission, if I'm faced with a situation where the proposal at hand, particularly one as pervasive as this subject is, given the people who may want to follow suit after approval of the commission of one or more of these, if the situation is that it is inconclusive, whether it negatively or positively affects the value of the home under construction with these things, the panels, and is inconclusive with respect to the neighbors around that home, with all due respect to the environmental, the energy savings and the help in terms of the environment, I would respectfully suggest that erring on the side of caution until we have data that statistically demonstrate otherwise, that we would not do things that could, based on the research we have before us, negatively impact the value of both the home at issue and the homes of those around it. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and comment here myself. In looking at the plan layout with the way the panels are facing There are no panels that are actually facing south. They have put panels on the north roof slope, but then on the east-west slopes, there are two gabled ends of the back of the house that could hold one panel each. And then to the right of the middle gable, there could probably be two panels located there. And you might be able to put two more panels on the area that I'm assuming is behind the garage, which is a monoslope roof. So that would be a total of possibly 8 panels that could be relocated to the back of the house, which would not be seen. The way our ordinance is written, and with not having the subdivision approval for the front of this, I would suggest that before this is brought back to us, that they obtain subdivision approval and then also try to relocate these where they cannot be seen from the public view, which is the street, from any angle. And that would be in agreement, I think, with our ordinance as it is written. Commissioner Jackson.
So we had this situation where we talked about lighting and et cetera last week. If the HOA does not approve it, which you didn't know this because Travis just found out, it's kind of moot that it comes before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Until you satisfy the HOA, they have final say, and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but we could approve it all day long, and if the HOA does not approve it, it doesn't matter. So it shouldn't be before us until, when you know that, until you satisfy the HOA, because it's not going to go in anyway. So, with every, I'm all for energy savings, et cetera, but that's pretty much how it is. The city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if we just let this, push this back, or if there needs to be a motion to table this until such time you satisfy the HOA, but I don't think we can address this right now. My 2 cents.
Yeah, what we have is a public hearing, and we're not actually voting on this, so we're just getting comments for the city, but I totally am in agreement with you, Commissioner Jackson.
Fair enough.
Commissioner Helfrey.
I'm just going to echo what Mr. Jackson said.
Are there any other comments or anyone online that would like to comment on this particular item?
Mr. Chair, the petitioner's representative has her hand raised.
Okay.
Thank you. So I talked to the homeowner today, Mr. Frank Polgar, and I talked to him about 10 minutes before this meeting. He told me a few weeks ago that the HOA was willing to hold a meeting with all of the HOA homeowners to vote on it. And then he got a call from them this morning saying that they were going to table it and reject it. And then he spoke with them maybe an hour ago, and they decided that they would still proceed with the meeting. So I don't think it's 100% ruled out quite yet. And this is just per the homeowner I talked to him about 20 minutes before this meeting.
Mr. Newberry, do we have anybody else online that either by chat or raise hand would like to speak on this matter?
Mr. Chair, while Mr. Newberry waits to see if there's any other speakers, I do want to address the issue of, does the city wait on approval from a homeowners association, or does the city proceed forward? And based upon our conversation 2 weeks ago, I believe Mr. Young believes that both have responsibilities and both must complete their responsibilities irrespective of each other's process. And Mr. Young has come online, so to speak, and I'm going to let him kind of explain it better probably than I would ever be able to. Thank you.
Mr. Young, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as I stated last time, the City Planning and Zoning Commission, in considering a conditional use permit for a tower, has to apply the provisions and tests set forth in the city code for such a conditional use permit. Now, ultimately, can the home, irrespective of what the city council does, can the homeowners association say no and stop it? Absolutely, they can. But the city still has an obligation to follow its requirements in the code. But as was pointed out, tonight is simply a public hearing, no action being taken. And obviously, from the petitioner's representatives' comments, still some issues to be worked out with the homeowners association as to whether or not they even want to continue forward with this process with the city.
Thank you, Mayor Boland.
So John, I have a question just to follow up on the issue as to, chicken and egg, which comes first. Be that as it may, does that prohibit the city from holding this kind of a hearing until after we have data, information from the homeowners association? Because if legally we're able to wait for that, it would seem that it would make for this discussion to be much more cogent and effective.
The city is not precluded from proceeding without information from the homeowners association. And again, they are two separate and parallel processes that the applicant has to go through that are, from the city's perspective, mutually exclusive.
Well, that's not my question. My question is, can a city wait until it has the information, the approval or disapproval from the homeowners association, and then proceed with the hearing and decision of the city?
I would recommend against that.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I would as too, within the procedures components in our zoning ordinance, once an application is filed, there's certain timeframes that the Department of Planning has to review it. Once the application is considered complete, there's a time frame for posting it for public hearing. And as I recall, overall, we have about 90 days to basically complete at least a recommendation unless postponements are anticipated. So we are under somewhat of a time clock. And I just wanted all the commission members to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Makes sense. Thanks.
Commissioner Jackson.
So I brought this up last week with the lighting, or 2 weeks ago, and chicken or egg. So could we put some guidance that it's, we can act, city attorney has spoken, but it is a best practice. It would be, advisable that they get the okay from their HOA before it comes to us. It's not mandatory, or maybe it's a guidance thing that we put some language. So people like Ms. Perea say, understand that coming in, just a kind of a guidance message. It's not mandatory. I don't know if that's advisable or not, but that might help. I'm done.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Mr. Vunich, is there probably isn't any way to do that, because if the applicant comes in, then we have to put it on the clock.
Well, certainly there is the clock component, but when we updated our regulations back, I believe in 2018, around that period of time, we also included as a new requirement the verification of notification by the property owner to the applicable homeowners association representatives shall be provided to the city of Wildwood with any application for installation of solar energy systems. Absence of said verification shall not negate any action on the application, with appeal of said to the Planning and Zoning Commission, all being in accordance with Chapter 150 City of Wildwood Code of Administrative Procedure. So we do advise applicants that they need to engage their homeowners association as quickly as they can and provide any input or feedback from them so we can have it available to us as we process the request through its conclusion. Thank you.
Commissioner Helfrey.
So understanding that this is a public hearing only, if and when this would come up in front of us again, or any other item just like this, is it within our rights to say, you know, for the sake of this argument, yes, we approve it as long as it is approved by the HOA? Because I don't understand how we can approve it if the HOA says no, and then it seems to me that would muddy the waters. So, I mean, I don't mean to drag us off track, but that's my thought on it. Thank you.
And Ms.
Mr.
Helfrey,
Benish, yeah.
as the city attorney explained 2 weeks ago, we cannot advocate our role to the homeowners association in making determinations relative to permits. We are obliged to proceed forward. Obviously, a key element in your decision may be if the homeowners association is saying no. That certainly plays a role in the recommendation that the department would provide to the commission. But I think it's, I believe Mr. Young put it as simply as we are not capable, or nor should we, enforce the private restrictions associated with indentures.
Okay, but, and I understand what you're saying, I guess, but I would wholeheartedly disagree with the fact that that doesn't make us enforcing the HOA's rules. I believe that says we are doing our job and saying yay or nay, with the caveat that you also still have another step to process. I don't think that necessarily kicks our can down the curb. It just puts it into everybody's mind that the HOA has to have approval. So I'm not trying to beat a dead horse or give you a headache. It's just, that's just my opinion on it. So thank you.
Again, Ms. Helfrey, unfortunately, I know of instances where decisions by the homeowners association is not based upon the merits of the proposal, but on the personalities involved. And certainly I'm experiencing one right now in a subdivision that's off State Route 109. So from the perspective of the department, I don't know what is the motivation behind decisions that are being made outside City Hall. And so I'm cautious when I depend on those decisions to make a decision for the city of Wildwood. And as we always try to do, there are 4 criteria in the conditional use permit regulations that we use to make determinations: good planning practice, impact on permitted uses in the same zoning district, visual compatibility, and then the community benefit derived if the permit was granted. And those are the ones we'll always use, and certainly the regulations specific to solar energy systems. Thank you.
Commissioner Beatty.
Yeah, as we go back and forth on this, I mean, I'll fully admit I tend to lean on the property rights of the property owners side of these issues, but I don't see an issue of us approving it with an HOA denial. Because if we're basing we should try to be as fair and impartial as we can. And if a personality conflict in the HOA, like Mr. Vunich was saying, arises, then that almost, to me, creates some sort of liability for us if we're going to deny it based on that HOA denial rather than our city rules. And so, yeah, I don't see an issue with us approving it and then the HOA denying it at a later date. And then if there's fines, that's between the property owner and the HOA rather than us and the property owner.
One thing I want to bring up for everybody, though, this is a public hearing. It's just to provide staff with input. The reason it's in front of us is it is non-compliant with our zoning ordinance. So we have a non-compliant thing. They're asking for a conditional use permit, which is a site-specific permit. But I would like to point out that I don't think this body has ever approved the visual ability of solar panels in a subdivision. So this would be a first. So just to let everybody know that as far as the background of the ordinance, and Mr. Vunich, you can weigh in on this if you would like.
Yeah, I withdraw my hand up. That's essentially what I was gonna say. This has got problems anyway.
And my question is,
Commissioner Ward, yeah, go ahead.
would this set a precedent then if we would approve it? Or would it again go back to side by side or project by project basis? But it would give some grounds that we had done it once, and why not again?
Mr. Vunich.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would defer to Mr. Young if he would like to answer that particular question, because I think our answers are going to be identical.
Mr. Young.
As it applies to a conditional use permit, you know, the concept here is to apply facts to law. And as with any property, all property is unique, and the application of the facts because of that uniqueness is going to be unique. However, when you have similar circumstances, you have to treat those similar circumstances the same. So would I go so far as to say it would be setting precedent? No, because that means everybody gets the same thing. But I would say that it does make it more difficult to treat someone differently if you would approve it.
Thank you.
Well said, sir.
Are there any more comments? Commissioner Beatty.
Just real quick, I feel like there was one that we approved street facing over in West Glen Farms 2, 3, 4 years ago. I was trying to find it on Apple Maps here, but I can't seem to see if, but that imagery could predate the installation as well. But I do seem to recall one that was street facing in a subdivision in West Glen Farms.
Mr. Beatty, your memory is very good, and we can send you some photographs that we've taken of that particular location so you can see how it turned out. And in that instance, the homeowners association, I think, was neutral because their indentures didn't have guidance, and they had others in the subdivision as well. Is that correct, Mr. Newberry? In my recollection.
That is correct.
And the other piece of information I hold on to that is they actually sent it out to a vote amongst the residents, and I think it got 70% or so in favor.
Mr. Chair, if there are no more comments, I would respectfully request a motion and second to close the public hearing.
Okay. Commissioner Helfrey.
I'll make a motion to close.
Okay.
I'll second.
Commissioner Beatty, second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Public hearing is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to petitioners represented.
So moving on to the first of the old business items, Mr. Vunich, are you reading PZ 8-21?
I am, sir, and thank you. PZ 8-21, 2531 Lindy Lane, Jeffrey Melvin, 4051 Indian Ridge Estates, Wildwood, Missouri 63069. A request for a change in zoning from the NU non-urban resident district to the R3 10,000 square foot resident district upon a property that is 0.39 acres in size, which is located on the west side of Lindy Lane, north of Manchester Road. Locator number 24V 530221, street address 2531 Lindy Lane. The subject property is designated Neighborhood Edge District under the current Town Center Regulating Plan. Proposed use, one single family dwelling on the existing non-conforming lot. This particular property is located in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry, do you have a presentation?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, at its July 19th, 2021 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department presented to the commission its information report with recommendation to support the requested change in zoning. This requested change in zoning from the NU non-urban residence district to the R3 10,000 square foot residence district would take a existing legal non-conforming lot and bring it into conformance with the application of the new zoning district designation, as well as apply the town center plans, neighborhood guidelines, and architectural neighborhood design standards, and architectural guidelines. At the July 19th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to support the department's recommendation. Before the department concludes its presentation tonight, it would just note that and advise the commission that Lindy Lane is a private drive, and the department acknowledges that if there is any future construction on the private drive in association with this change in zoning, if it's supported by the commission and the city council, that any damage to the private street will be restored and repaired as part of a potential future construction project associated with that. With that, Mr. Chair, the department is presenting the draft letter of recommendation for the commission's consideration. It reflects the commission's vote on July 19 and is in the appropriate form to forward to city council for its consideration. And Mr. Chair, I would also note that Mr. Melvin, the property owner, is in attendance as well, if there are any questions for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. I'll open this up for discussion, or I'll entertain a motion to approve or disapprove the department's recommendations. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, just one last question. It may have been covered before. Septic. So it's right under, I think, 3 or 5 acres now. I'm not sure what the state law is. Is there access to public sewer, or is this a septic system? Would there be any violation if they put in a septic system or anything like that that we got to worry about?
With the chair's permission, Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. The site does have access to public sewer and will connect to it.
Okay, fair.
So I need an action. Commissioner Cohn.
Like to make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Helfrey, second. Are there any other discussion topics? Seeing none, we'll move on to a roll call vote. Mr. Newberry.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Newberry, this one is yours, I think. PZ 21-21.
PZ 21-21, Debbie and Peter Rademeyer, 17808 Suzanne Ridge Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63038, are seeking the review and action of the Planning and Zoning Commission to retain an existing outdoor game court that is 30 feet by 65 feet in size and to be located at 17808 Suzanne Ridge Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 21V430362, R1 1 acre residence district with a planned environment unit, PEU. This request is to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.110 R1 1 acre residence district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning code, which establishes standards and requirements for outdoor game courts relating to their consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. In this instance, the existing game court is to be situated on this 0.42 acre parcel of ground to the east of the existing single-family dwelling located on the subject property. The Department of Planning will have a recommendation report on this request prepared for consideration at this meeting. Ward 3.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich, the presentation and floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. First of all, thank you to the sharp-eyed Planning and Zoning Commission members that caught the light standard at our last meeting and identified it as being in place. And obviously, the report prepared by the department was not consistent with such. So thank you. Secondly, I'd like to thank the Redemeyers, the petitioners, for their hospitality. I had a conversation with Mr. Redemeyer and then visited the property where Mrs. Redemeyer was kind enough to let us access their rear yard area and visit the outdoor game court and take photographs of the actual light standard. Acknowledging all of that, the department has laid out a protocol that it would like the Planning and Zoning Commission to accept tonight. The first of those protocols is the resubmittal of the recommendation report for the outdoor game court. That report is attached to the cover letter that is part of the overall packet of information. And again, that report is favorable. Secondly, the petitioner has agreed to proceed to the Board of Adjustment regarding the light standard. The Board of Adjustment is necessary to consider the light standard because the underlying regulations for this particular zoning district does not allow outdoor lighting of game courts due to the fact that it is in our district. So even if the Planning and Zoning Commission was inclined to support it or not support lighting, you are unable to, for the most part, address it. And it is a Board of Adjustment issue. And to the Redemeyers' benefit, they are willing to consider any modifications to the lighting that might come out of a discussion with the Board of Adjustment and the Department of Planning. I believe the protocol is appropriate and solid from the standpoint of consideration, in that it allows the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider the outdoor game court as if the light standard was not there. It gives the appropriate review authority to the Board of Adjustment, as is set forth in state statute and local code. And then finally, we have a petitioner or petitioners that are willing to work with the city on the outdoor lighting requirements associated with it. With the protocol being presented and the first step of it proceeding forward tonight, the department would again note that the outdoor game court does, in its opinion, is appropriate at this particular location, causes no undue impact on any adjoining properties. And from the perspective of the department, with its approval, the items that have been identified as the substandard wall or the wall that is falling and the lighting standard can all be addressed through the appropriate procedures and improve the actual outdoor game court and associated facilities. So tonight, the department is presenting a favorable recommendation for consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Redemeyer is on the Zoom webinar, and after the chair opens the floor to discussion or accepts the motion, the department and the petitioner will be available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I'll open this up for a discussion or a motion. Mayor Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank the Redemeyers for going through this process. Much appreciated. It's just something we have to do. And we obviously had a lot of information on this at the last meeting. And I want to also thank Commissioner Jackson for his astute eye relative to this. With all that in mind, I would make a motion to approve as recommended by the department.
Commissioner Broyles.
I would second that motion. And we did have a lengthy discussion the last time. I think we're all pretty much aware of the cooperation that the homeowners have had with this process.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. If there is any other discussion, I'll take that now. Otherwise, we'll go into a roll call vote. Roll call vote. Mr. Newberry.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes, good luck with the repairs.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Newberry, I'll turn this over to you for PZ 4-21.
PZ 4-21, Randy Buckendorf, 2057 Wild Horse Creek Road, Wildwood, Missouri 63038. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU non-urban residence district for the retention of ground-mounted solar panels upon this 4.5 acre parcel of ground, which is located on the west side of Wild Horse Creek Road, north of Falzone Road. Street address 2057 Wild Horse Creek Road, locator number 23X530105. The petitioner is also seeking to retain certain roof-mounted solar panels, which are so situated on the existing dwelling that such are likewise visible from an abutting roadway. These installations are required to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance, which establishes standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. The requested permit is required due to the proposed solar panels being of a ground-mounted design type, as well as roof-mounted panels situated on an area of the dwelling's roof, which causes them to be visible from the abutting roadway. Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich, I'll turn it over to you for the presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department would just like to start with a brief summary of the chronology associated with this particular application for a conditional use permit. On May 3rd of this year, 2021, the public hearing on this matter was held. As the discussion moved forward relative to the application, the Planning and Zoning Commission held a significant amount of discussion and had a number of opinions. Ultimately, at the conclusion of the hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission thought it would be appropriate for the petitioners to proceed first to the Board of Adjustment before any recommendation report would be considered by it. The Board of Adjustment did have a hearing on this particular matter. The Board of Adjustment granted variances to the front yard setback, both for the roof-mounted component as well as the ground-mounted component of the solar energy system. That discussion at the Board of Adjustment focused on steps to alleviate some of the impacts caused by both the roof and ground-mounted components of the solar energy system. With the Board of Adjustment's action being completed, it was now appropriate to proceed forward with the request for the conditional use permit before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so tonight, that is the next step in the process and being presented to the Commission for consideration and action. In preparation for this discussion, the Department of Planning has provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission its information report with recommendation. And in that information report, the department provides background relative to the site itself, the petition property, the area around the petition property, and existing land use characteristics of both the site and the area as well. Thereafter, the department describes the proposal both in terms of the site and then the proposal relative to the number of solar panels in association with the system. In this particular case, I think it is important to emphasize that the solar energy system is installed. And as has been mentioned at the May 3rd public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as to the Board of Adjustment, the error was made It has been acknowledged both by the property owners and the contractor. And certainly, I think it was not done with malice at all based upon the comments that have been made. However, there were no permits. There was no process to guarantee something like this would not happen. And so therefore, again, the department is reflecting on that, and its recommendation is a component of the situation as it exists. In the recommendation report, the information report prepared by the department is recommending support of the roof-mounted components of the overall solar energy system. In that report, it notes that modifications to those roof-mounted panels as part of the solar energy system to match the shingle color of the roof will, for all intents and purposes, minimize its impact from Wild Horse Creek Road. Additionally, the dwelling is a combination of old and new. The house existed for decades prior to the addition being added just before 2000 by the current owners, and by the fact that they built the addition consistent with the existing line of the older component of the home is close to Wild Horse Creek Road. That, for all intents and purposes, plays into the department's support of it, in that by placing the home closer to the road with the pitch of the roof, the department believes it is harder to see from Wild Horse Creek Road just by that fact. That, along with the modifications and the 4 components of the conditional use permit process that must be considered, again, the department is supportive of the roof-mounted system. However, that support does not carry over to the ground-mounted system. In fact, the department believes the impact, at least in terms of visual compatibility, is substantial in a negative way, and that from the perspective of good planning practice, authorizing something after permits were not obtained is not appropriate in its opinion. Therefore, tonight, the department has a split recommendation, supportive of the roof-mounted component of the system, but not of the ground-mounted component. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, after the floor is open for discussion or a motion is made, the Department of Planning will be available for comments or questions. And I would note that the property owners, the Buckendorfs, are now on the Zoom webinar and certainly may have opinions relative to the department's recommendation and comments made tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I'll open this up for discussion or a motion. Mayor Boland.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And to the Buckendorfs, first of all, I want to thank you so much for being part of Wildwood. We're glad to have you. This is very difficult for us for several reasons, as I'm sure you know. Given that it was installed before the approvals were done, and there is a heightened scrutiny that we have to apply, or at least I think we have to apply, relative to ground mounted versus roof mounted. And so, we talked earlier tonight about the studies that we try to do in terms of navigating these waters, so to speak, relative to the effect of all this. And I want you to have everything you want, but unfortunately, I think the department nailed it here. And so I would make a motion to support the department's recommendation, which is to allow what you have on your roof, but relative to those that are on the ground, just given the effect that it has potentially on not only your property value, frankly, but other property owners around you, that not go forward. And I'm not sure whether the solar panel company you retained to help you with this let you know about all of these things before they did. If they didn't, I'd probably have a chat with them about it. But that's another day for you, but that would be my motion to support the department's recommendation. And thank you so much, and I hope you understand that motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second the motion.
Commissioner Ward, second. Any further discussion? Mr. Buckendorf, I'll let you comment.
Yeah, so we certainly respect the city of Wildwood. We've lived here for over 30 years, and we were respectful of them when we obtained the variance to put the addition to our home in opposition of the 50-foot offset, because it jibed more with our existing home, which was less than that. The only comment I think I have is that we don't have gas, it's all electric. And the solar company obtained the number of panels required based on our electric usage, which, we have 4 air conditioners and 4 furnaces. We have substantial electric use. And so should we not be allowed to have the ground mounted panels, then we would, in order to meet the electrical needs, need to put them somewhere. We can't really, we can't put them where they're in the shade. We could put more of them on the front of the house, I guess. I don't know if we get that number on the front of the house, but the south, east, west kind of, you can't put them on the north of the house, what I'm saying. And I'm not an expert by any means with regard to law, and I see the city attorneys here, and or precedent, but I do understand that there are laws on the books and there are precedents set with federal and or state cases. I guess I could cite them, but I'm sure the attorney knows them as well. I mean, I think the crux of the cases that have said that you can't prevent them from being less than efficient. In other words, if they're more expensive or they're less efficient, those cases have been to court and have not done very well. So I'm not saying that we're going to court. We totally respect the city and their recommendations, but we in our paperwork that we got from the city said that the ground mount would be allowed or recommended to be allowed based upon landscape screening, which we are fully prepared to do. I think they had 2 requests. One was that the panels be, there are some aluminum corners on these panels, and they would be painted black as opposed to being aluminum color. And the second recommendation was to screen these ground mounted panels with landscaping. That was the recommendation. I didn't hear that come up in front of the board. That's all I had. I mean, we're good people and we want to do what's right, but again, we would like to offset our electric bill with solar, which is what the federal government wants us to do, and it's what the state government wants us to do.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Vunich, do we have anything written from Board of Zoning Adjustment that we could restate?
Mr. Chair, the Buckendorfs are correct. When the Board of Adjustment recommended approval of both components having a reduced front yard setback, they did condition it on landscaping around the base of the ground mounted system and then converting the roof mounted system so as there isn't the aluminum color in association with the dark panels. I would note that the department did support at the Board of Adjustment the roof mounted panels having a reduced setback, but did not support the ground mounted panels having a reduced setback. So again, the Board of Adjustment acted. That's independent of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and certainly you can proceed in any direction you choose. However, the motion on the floor is to support the department's recommendation.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilman Brost.
Yeah, I guess, my position on it is that, I think the front-facing panels, we seem to talk about them a lot. And like Joe Vunich can correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that this is not consistent with our zoning. And for that reason, I won't support the department's position. This is, I drive by these routinely, and I don't know how we can approve this and not just approve everybody. I mean, we have to be to be fair, I think you have to be consistent. So I don't see approving it mainly because I don't believe that it's consistent with our zoning. And if Joe Vunich, if I'm wrong, correct me, because I think my job is to actually support the city's ordinances and zoning regulations. I don't think it's my job to change them. Thank you. Well, it might be my job to change them, but not in this capacity.
Mr. Vunich.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to Mr. Brost, certainly my job is, like yours, is not to interpret the code incorrectly and to follow the regulations as they were intended to be. I believe in the case of the roof-mounted panels, there is enough support in the regulations to accommodate it. As with anything, there's a certain degree of interpretation, but certainly we can disagree on the interpretation. And I would respect that from you as just as any other.
Commissioner Jackson.
I just I'd like to hear more because Mr. Brost, Councilman Brost, especially with, being consistent. If we hear more concerns regarding that, we can split this motion as we've done before and handle the ground mount, which seems to be pretty unanimous reading the room, and then the rooftop, because I'd like to hear more council people in regards to that, because it's got my attention.
In order to split this, I'd have to go back to the original maker of the motion, which was.
I'm not advocating it at this point. I'm talking about through discussion. If others have concerns, as Mr. Brost on the rooftop part, that's just a remedy to that, because he's got my attention on that, on consistency.
Mayor Boland.
So one option we could do by consensus would be to defer decision on the roof mount and make a decision on the land mount. And if there is unanimity, as it seems to be relative to the land mount, that gets decided tonight. And then it could come back to the commission relative to the roof mount, to the extent additional information is needed to be provided, or as Commissioner Jackson suggested, it could be split, and the commission could vote on each of those separately tonight. That would take a motion to divide the issues with a second and a majority vote.
Do we have an action, or we have a motion and a second to approve the department's recommendation?
Well, the motion on the floor is to approve the department's recommendation, but if there is hesitation on the part of the commission relative to the first part of that, the roof mounted, I would recommend that be delayed until the commission has the data that it needs to look at it more fully, and that we just simply vote on the ground mount tonight and handle that one now.
I would agree with that. I'd like to hear more.
Commissioner Jackson, would you like to make a motion to split the items?
No, I think we, well, I'm more interested in Mayor Boland's deferment of the rooftop till we have more information. We can take, I'm okay to take up the ground mount. So I'm not sure exactly the course. If we split it, then it's an up or down vote on the rooftop. And I don't think we're ready for that, or I'm not, but if the council is, then we can go in that direction. Mayor Boland, I'm sorry, I'll yield.
That's all right. No worries. So I'll make a motion to split the issue, and then if that passes, then we can make a motion. Any one of us can make a motion to postpone the roof mount. And if that gets passed, then we can handle the ground mount. So I'll make a motion to split the issue.
Okay, we have a motion. Second by Commissioner Jackson.
And we can do voice vote on that.
Okay, so let's do the ground mount voice vote. All those in favor?
No.
Wait, no, to split the issue.
Oh, to go ahead and split the issue. I'm sorry. So all those in favor to split the issue, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? So the action is split, ground mount, and then roof mount.
And if someone wants to make a motion to postpone the roof mount, we can handle that and then handle address the land mount after that motion.
Yeah, Councilman Brost.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to postpone the roof mount.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone roof. I need a second. Commissioner Depler, second. So I think we can do voice on this as well, if I'm not mistaken. So all those in favor for postponing the roof mount action, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Beatty opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes. So then
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I would note that Ms. Buckendorf has had her hand up for a bit.
Okay, Ms. Buckendorf, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
This may be too late at this particular point, but some things that came up for the ground mounted as options would be to remove the row, a row of panels so that we met more of the setback requirements, and also the landscape screening. So I just wanted to be clear that those options were on the table for us.
And also, I didn't bring up, but the council also has letters from our neighbors immediately across the street and adjacent, several houses up, several houses down the other way, voicing approval and that they have no issue with any of the panels, ground mount nor roof mount.
Thank you for your comment, but I think the action that we're dealing with tonight is the configuration that is in the exhibits. So that's what we have to deal with. Any reconfiguration, you could always bring it back and present again, even with the landscaping. So with that being said, we can vote on the action for the ground mount, Mayor Boland.
So we will need a motion for that, Mr. Chair, as you know, and that's what you were presumably leading into. And so I would make a motion to deny, as you stated, as presented, the ground mount solar panels.
We have a motion to deny, which is in acceptance of the department's original recommendation to deny. I need a second. Councilman Brost. Second. So this will require a roll call vote. Mr. Newberry. Right?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hofree, Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion passes to deny the ground-mounted solar panels in the configuration as presented. And we will postpone the roof until the department can make another presentation. Is that correct, Mr. Vunich? Okay,
Yes, sir. And I hope to have it back on September 7th.
thank you. Moving on, we have a site development plan. Mr. Vunich, I believe you're reading this item.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, a recommendation report from the Site Plan Subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission on its review and discussion of the site development plan and related items for PZ 6-20 Fix Supply Service Incorporated, 501 North Etherton Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005. Amended M3 Planned Industrial District, ordinance number 2574, 31.56 acre tract of land, west side of North Etherton Road, north of Centaur Road, St. Louis County, locator number 17X32008, 18X640013, and 18X630014. Street addresses 365, 495, and 501 North Etherton Road that supports the 10-acre expansion of the current facility and maintaining current permitted uses upon it. This particular property is located in Ward 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry, I'll turn it over for presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Tonight, the department is presenting on behalf of the Site Plan Subcommittee of the Planning and Zoning Commission a favorable recommendation regarding an amended site development plan related to the item that was just read into the record. The Site Plan Subcommittee met on July 19, 2021 to discuss the amended site development plan, and a motion was made and supported by the subcommittee to recommend approval of the amended site development plan for this 10-acre expansion and improved entrance area, this existing business. Department would note the major point of discussion with the site plan subcommittee members was regarding the entrance area and the clarification of the exhibits showing the expanded entrance area. Mr. Chair, with your permission, I will share my screen to show the updated exhibit that was prepared by Stock and Associates.
Yes, thank you.
And this is the exhibit that Stock and Associates provided after hearing the comment by the site plan subcommittee to more clearly depict the expansion of the entrance and exit area, the addition of a landscape median with a monument sign and flagpole. And if any commission members have questions at the conclusion of the department's presentation regarding this, the engineer of record, Drew Dixon, is in attendance, as well as Mr. Fick. So with that, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Site Plan Subcommittee has reviewed this amended site development plan and is presenting to the Planning and Zoning Commission a recommendation for the approval of it based on the rationales that are outlined in its report. And with that, Mr. Chair, with the motion in a second, or open the floor for discussion. Department's available for any questions. And as I mentioned, Mr. Dixon and Mr. Fick are also in attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. I'll open this for discussion and or entertain a motion. Commissioner Beatty.
Motion to approve the department's recommendation.
A motion to approve. Commissioner Broyles. Second. Is there any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, we'll go into a roll call vote. Mr. Newberry.
Commissioner Depler.
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hofree.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland. Mayor Boland.
He may have stepped away.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes with a 9-0 vote with one absent.
Okay. The motion is passed. Moving on, Mr. Newberry, are you going to read the next item?
Yes, sir. Thank you. A recommendation report prepared by the Department of Planning and Parks for the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding an amended site development plan, SDSP, and related items for PZ 19-14, the Manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills, McBride Town Center LLC, care of Jeannie Allmiller, 16091 Swingley Ridge Road, Suite 300, Chesterfield, Missouri 63017, R4 7,500 square foot residence district, Town Center Neighborhood General District, with the Planned Residential Development Overlay District, PRD, south side of Manchester Road at Cherry Hills Meadow Drive, located numbers 24V640065 and 24V640076, street addresses 16612 Manchester Road and 102 Cherry Hills Meadows Drive, which supports a favorable action on a requested trail relocation in association with a pedestrian bridge that is planned between the Manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills and the Manors at the Enclaves subdivision, Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich, this one is yours for the presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, several years ago, the original set of plans for this particular pedestrian bridge and trail segments was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And at that time, the commission members supported it. The project is quite simple. As part of the Manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills, McBride Homes constructed a short trail segment from the main street over to an existing drainage tributary. That trail is intended to connect with another trail segment constructed by Claymont Development as part of the Manors at the Enclaves. So two trail segments existed, but no way to cross the drainage tributary. As part of the McBride and Homes project, they were required to provide $11,000 toward the public space requirements, and that money is intended for the pedestrian bridge. Ultimately, with the approval of the site development plan by the Planning and Zoning Commission, the project went forward and City Council ultimately authorized the bidding process. The bidding process proceeded and was concluded, and contractor was identified and placed under contract. At the pre-construction meeting with that contractor, it was discovered that a grand tree was to be removed. And this grand tree provided ample shade, stabilized the drainage area, and as well as was deserving of being considered for retention. The Planning and Parks Committee of City Council and City Council authorized consideration of a revision to the plan. Ultimately, that revision was endorsed. And so tonight, the Department of Planning is presenting to you a site development section plan indicating the relocation of the trail slightly to the south, the replacement of boulders with ready rock material, and most importantly, the preservation of the grand tree. So tonight, the department is respectfully requesting a favorable action on the revised design of this pedestrian bridge and trail segments consistent with the direction from City Council. Mr. Chair, after the floor is open for discussion or a motion is made, the Department of Planning will be available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I'll open this up for discussion or a motion. Now, Mr. Beatty.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay. Commissioner Ward, second. So we have a motion to approve and a second. If there's any discussion on this, I can entertain that. Otherwise, we'll go into a roll call vote. Roll call vote, Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yeah.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, our last item of tonight is the nominating committee. And I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Vunich, if you want to go into some detail. I have two people that have volunteered for the committee so far. It's Commissioner Broyles and Commissioner Beatty.
Mr. Chair, today, Mr. Newberry and I received an email from Ms. Helfrey, who said she'd be glad to serve as a member of the four-person nominating committee. So we need one more.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, great. Commissioner Depler.
Mr. Chair, with the volunteers now all set, we have the four-member nominating committee. And Mr. Newberry and I will contact the four and try to set up a meeting of the nominating committee well in advance of our September 7th meeting. And we'll be back with more details at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to the end of this scheduled meeting. Does anybody have any comments? Mayor Boland.
I would just like to say thanks to each one of you for all that you do for our city. Much appreciated. And particularly to you, Chair Lee, for the time that you've been on this commission.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, I'll need a motion to adjourn. Councilman Brost. And a second, Commissioner Depler. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Mr. Vunich.
Just to all of you, have a nice Labor Day weekend. We'll see you on the Tuesday after the Labor Day holiday. As Mr. Mayor said, we do appreciate your service to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night,
And thanks
everyone.
for everything that you do, Joe.
Good night, everyone.
Good evening.